Hey everyone! Well, what a story this is. Soul Patts remains one of the few public companies that has been managed by the same family from the outset. The story started when Caleb Soul and his son Washington opened their first store at 177 Pitt Street, Sydney in 1872, while Louis Pattinson opened his first pharmacy in Balmain in 1886. The men became friends. Some years later, Washington Soul approached his old friend, Louis Pattinson, and asked if Pattinson & Co. would buy him out. Pattinson agreed, and after discussion with his partners, Pattinson & Co. bought out Washington H. Soul & Co., effective from April 1902. Out of respect for his old friends, Louis Pattinson included the name of Washington H. Soul in the name of the new company, Washington H. Soul Pattinson & Company. Incorporated on the 21st of January in 1903 and listed on the Sydney Stock Exchange, now the Australian Securities Exchange. Today, this company is now Australia's second oldest listed firm, having been listed for some 121 years, and is affectionately known as Soul Patts. It has paid a consistent dividend each and every year to shareholders since 1903. Delivering increasing dividends every year since 2000. The chairman of Soul Patts, Robert Millner AO, is Louis Pattinson's great-grandson. He represents the fourth generation of the family to chair the company. Rob has been on the Soul Patts board since 1984 and chairman since 1998. When Rob became chair, Soul Patts had a market capitalisation of some $700 million. Today, the company has a market cap of more than $12 billion, making it an ASX top 50 company. Wow.
Hi, it's Rob Millner here, Chair of Soul Patts, and I'm excited to catch up with Tim on Euros Hartley's Finding the Front. Speak to you shortly.
Good on you, Rob.
Welcome to Euros Hartley's Finding the Front, where we get to know the people who front some of Western Australia's leading companies, providing you with real insights into the way they think and approach things, both in business and in life. So get the volume adjusted in your car or your headphones sorted and settle in for a great story. Here's your host, Tim Banfield.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a huge episode of Euros Hartley's Finding the Front. For those of you who are not aware, Euros Hartley's is a proudly Western Australian leading financial services company. We specialise in the provision of corporate finance, institutional sales, private wealth and targeted research services. If you'd like to learn more about Euros Hartley's and the services we provide, please don't hesitate to contact us or check out our website at www.euroshartleys.com. Well, as you heard earlier, our special guest is none other than corporate icon and fourth generation chair of Soul Patts, Robert Millner AO. With over 40 years investment experience, Rob is one of Australia's most experienced investors, having guided diversified investment company Soul Patts as chair for more than a quarter of a century. It really is a privilege to have Rob on the show. So without further ado, it gives me an enormous pleasure to introduce to Euros Hartley's Finding the Front, the chair of Soul Patts, an all-round good guy, Mr. Robert Millner. Hi Rob, and welcome to Euros Hartley's Finding the Front. It's such a privilege to have you on the show, it really is, and thanks a lot for taking the time out to join us on your quick trip over from Sydney. It really is just so great to have you in the studio.
No, it's nice to be back.
Good on you.
I used to come to Perth once a month a few years ago, so I haven't been back for a couple of years, so it's nice to be back.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. It's really good to be able to have some time to just talk to you in the studio about your life and your career. In fact, we could do a little podcast on your family alone.
We don't need to go that deep.
No. But in the interest of time, look, it's been an outstanding story for shareholders over a very long time. And I've heard the comparison that Soul Patts is widely regarded as the closest investment vehicle in Australia to Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
Which is just some compliment, isn't it?
Yeah. We're nothing like the scale, of course, but interesting. I've been over to Omaha probably 4 or 5 times for their annual meeting.
Yes.
With Warren and Charlie, and it's just fascinating how those two guys have put together such a massive, massive company. And you've got to remember over there, they don't pay dividends.
No.
So if you earn $100 million every year and you reinvest that $100 million, the compounding effect over a long period of time.
It's phenomenal.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And the scale of America, like we're tiny out here.
Tell me, did you meet Warren and Charlie?
No. If I would have gone 20, 25 years ago, I would have. They used to take time to meet all the foreign investors in those days.
Yeah.
But it's become a bit of a zoo. There's about 40,000 people turn up now.
Yeah.
But
I think, with what we're doing in the podcast is just learning a little bit about your background to start with. And I noticed you were born in Sydney and you grew up in Cowra in central New South Wales.
Yeah.
That was pretty formative.
Yeah, for some reason the family, my father had 2 brothers. They bought a family property in 1957. Then the younger brother, who was actually a builder, he bought a place in 58. Then my father got excited and bought one in 1959.
So the 3 of them had one.
Well, no, the first one was a family.
Oh, yeah.
And Jim, who was my uncle, who was chairman of Washington H. Solar Pattinson, he wasn't. He was just one of the partners.
Yeah.
And I was still at boarding school in those days. I started boarding school when I was 8. So I sort of stayed there till I was sort of finished school. Then I worked with a stockbroker for a couple of years and then went back to the farm.
Did you go up to the farm on holidays and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You got to remember in those days they were 3 term, so we were away for 14 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
So which was a bloody long time when you were young in those days.
I was going to ask, I boarded for 5 years. I didn't board since I was 8, But how did you find it from that young age?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Go in and kick a footy every afternoon or hit a cricket ball in summer.
Yeah.
And the mates, it was wonderful. Wonderful.
What did you take away from boarding? Like as an interesting part of your life, because it's pretty formative. You spent a lot of time there at Newington College.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I learnt respect most of all.
Yeah.
In those days, the senior boys ran the school and you had to respect your peers.
Did you get a clip under the ear?
Well, if you didn't do as you were told. And so I think that was probably my greatest lesson in life was learning respect and do what you were told and when to do it, etc.
Were you academic, Rob?
You shouldn't have asked me that one. No, I had no tertiary education. I obviously gained my HSC. Then in those days there were no schoolies.
So you missed out on that too.
So the day after I finished my last exam, I went and started work with a stockbroker.
Well, I was just going to ask, with school and that sort of thing, did you have any idea on what you wanted to do? What drove you to get into the markets?
Well, the family had quite a large equity portfolio. Right. And in those days, we used to go to Canberra, and it was Coopers and Lybrand in those days.
Yes.
And the whole family used to go down, and my grandparents in their 90s used to come. So we'd have a family meeting, and, of course, we'd have lunch afterwards. And so that sort of started to tickle my fancy in equities.
Yes.
And we were always encouraged to go and listen.
Yes.
And don't ask silly questions and just sit there and listen. And I think that was my early backgrounding in becoming involved in business.
When you got into it, who did you work for when you first left school?
A company called E.E. Baldus & Co.
Right.
And he was a Swiss guy and he was fascinated with gold.
Oh, righto.
Because in those days, gold was pegged at $30 an ounce. And he was on a great belief that they were going to unpeg it, which he was right. And in those days, the market was pretty scratchy. You could set the buy and sell every afternoon. And
right.
There was a lot of insider trading because everything was done manually.
Yeah.
And it was at the start of the boom years in 68, 69 and 70. So it was fascinating.
It would have been a great experience.
Oh, it was fascinating.
Do you love it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. You went to the farm for a while.
Yeah.
Now, do you see yourself pretty predominantly as a country boy at heart? From the background and your upbringing?
Yeah.
You got a lot of good mates out there still.
Yeah. And I don't like to say these sort of things, but people in the bush are more genuine than the city people are. They don't care what size car you've got or how big your house is, or they're more genuine type of people. And as I said, I've got a lot of good mates out there, and I've expanded my rural interests at the moment. So I've got quite a big holding out there now. So
you still got some property out,
yeah.
and the family farms are all still intact?
No, the original farm we sold, we bought a bigger one.
Yep.
And I've added on. I've now got irrigation, and I've got quite a reasonable setup there. So
do you get up there a bit?
I try and go up 3 times every couple of months.
Yep. Cattle?
Cattle on the main place, and then we do a lot of irrigation.
Yep.
A lot of lucerne farming, and we've grown things like sweet corn and popcorn and things like that. We're very lucky. I've got a very good allocation of water. So,
Rob, when you look at farming and what it's been to you, has it given you a good grasp on, I think just life in general when you're running Soul Patts over such an extended period of time? Is it something you sort of draw on?
Yeah, and I think you learn a lot, and the experience that we're in at the moment, there's been a bit of a downturn in the market.
Yeah.
And when you're on a farm, you've got climate, currencies,
yep,
and commodity.
There's risk everywhere.
Yeah. So you're either, I shouldn't say, but it's nearly a feast and a famine.
Yeah.
So I think that educates you into, it's not always good at the top.
Yes.
You've got to button up, and that's what it solves. We've been always very conservative, and we never had any debt until 5 or 6 years ago when interest rates virtually came down to zero. And I said to Todd, we probably should be borrowing some money at these levels.
Yes.
And so up until COVID, we'd never borrowed any money.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how the Soul Pattinson business started. If we go back to just Louis, and because you're his great-grandson.
Yeah.
It's a frighteningly unbelievable story. It's just great.
Well, when you look at 5 generations, there's an old story, the first 2 make it and the third one pisses it up against the wall. So we're in uncharted waters. But no, it's been an amazing journey through many cycles of depressions and et cetera, war years. But people.
Yes.
People. We've always managed to attract good people. And when we were basically pharmacy up until the sort of mid-60s, we'd had 3 families with 3 generations have actually worked in the company. And even today, a lot of the senior guys, Todd and David Scammell and Brent Smith and Dean Price, have been with us for 10 or 12, 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's always been a good place to work, and we've encouraged, good people to stay around. And, we're not flashy people. We're good, genuine type people that the company's never owned a boat. Never owned a plane.
Yeah.
I drive a $70,000 car.
Yeah.
Yep. And when I'm in the office, I walk around to staff every morning and say good morning to them, ask them how they're going. And
good on you.
Well, it's people.
Yeah.
Unless you've got good people, you haven't got a business.
Yeah. Rob, if you go back just to the former chairs of the business, right, and there's only been 4 of them. There's Louis.
Yeah.
Then there was William or Fred.
Yeah.
And then there was Jim Millner, and then yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Louis sounded like a stand-up bloke, right? He was having a crack, and he got the job done and brought the 2 together, and then it became Washington H. Soul Patts. But Jim, it sounded like he had quite a big impact on you because you joined during his reign.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could give us a bit of an insight into Jim and what you took away from him.
Yeah. He, unfortunately, he was a POW in Singapore, captured by the Japanese, and fortunately he was an officer, and they went to Sandakan, and the death march, which we all know about, where there's only a handful of people survived. They were all the privates.
Right.
So he was fortunate that he was an officer, and he came back a very disciplined man, tough.
Yeah.
Taught me a lot of things. One of the first things when he suggested I come back on the board in 1984, he said the first few months you just sit there and listen and have some common sense.
Yes.
He said common sense is the most important thing in life. And then he came back after the war, and towards the end of the 50s and 60s when things started to lighten up a bit. I was born in 1950 and I didn't appreciate it, but things were very tough after the war years.
Yes.
There was still rations. The pubs used to shut at 6 o'clock. I remember my old man telling me they used to play football and they were lucky to go and get a long net before the pub shut at 6 o'clock after the football. So it was pretty hard going till the 60s.
Yeah. But with Jim, he was quite pivotal and coming back to that sort of tough period of time, he was quite pivotal in the change of direction for Soul Patts at the time.
Yeah.
And I understand that he met this guy called Professor Eric Rudd.
Yeah.
And that's how this evolved, who was one of the top geologists in Australia.
Yeah.
It's quite good to talk about this because here we are in WA,
Yeah.
the resource base of Australia.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be good to just understand that pivot.
Can I just go back a step?
Yep.
In the late 30s, Boots, the big English pharmacy group, wanted to come to Australia. At that stage, we had something like 50-odd stores of our own. So the government legislated that we couldn't own any more stores and to stop Boots coming in.
Right.
And the same with other smaller pharmacies that people had 2 or 3 or whatever. So then after the war years, Jim modelled himself on Boots, and we were the first ones to have discounts. We used to have baskets outside our shop. It was all strip shopping. There were no Woolworths or Coles in big centres as we know today.
Yes.
So that sort of changed how we ran pharmacy dramatically. And then, as you mentioned, he was invited to join AOG, Australian Oil and Gas. And in those days, it was probably the biggest mining company in Australia. And as you mentioned, a guy called Professor Eric Rudd, regarded as one of the leading geologists in Australia. They put 2 and 2 together and thought there was going to be a mining boom, which did happen in the end of 60s.
Yeah.
And that really gave Soles the impetus. After the mining boom was over, we bought a lot of Pico Walls in and Western Mining shares and BHP shares, which we liquidated a lot at the top of the boom. And that sort of diversified us away from
pharmacy.
Being so dependent on pharmacy, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, how many pharmacies were you running then?
Well, how we got around it was we opened up what they call agents or franchises.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, so you were a Soul Pattinson agent or a franchise.
Yep.
That's how we got around the law about not owning stores.
The
ourselves.
regulation, yeah.
And that was again, he was the first one to think of doing that.
He was a highly regarded businessman, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, they were all tough buggers in those days.
Yeah.
They had to survive. They grew up in the Depression years and went to war. Like, we're so soft.
Well, was it Jim was responsible for the early investment into coal?
Yep.
Yeah, and he oversaw the transaction for Brickworks as well.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a light around that one, because that's obviously been a very strong and a pillar of Soul Pat's going forward.
Yeah. Well, in the 70s, there was a lot of corporate raiders. There was Robert Holmes Accord and Sir Ron Brearley and Spalvins, and a guy called Bill Dawes who controlled Brickworks was concerned that someone might knock him over. So him and Jim bumped into each other and got talking one day, and that's how they put the cross-shareholding together.
Yeah. And now Brickworks is a national business. Yeah, because you acquired Bristol from Elders.
Yeah.
And then New Hope has gone on to be gone from a small mine to a multi-billion-dollar.
We used to call it No Hope. No, it was a very small operation that was brought to us by a guy called Frank Robinson, who worked with a stockbroking company called Patrick Partners.
Right.
And then, as you'll probably allude to, we went into Indonesia and started a mine up there in Indonesia, and then the coal price collapsed. When we started up there, coal was worth $24, $25.
Right.
And then as we were developing this operation up there, we got down to 16 or 17, and the banks wouldn't lend us any money. So that's how come that Soul Pattinson owned over 60% of it at some period of time, because we had to keep putting the money because the banks wouldn't lend us any money.
They didn't have any belief in it either.
And then all of a sudden there was a lot of anarchy, a lot of strikes.
Yeah.
And everybody, particularly because we had a mine in Jupapilly in Queensland at the time, everybody had cut their costs dramatically when the unions were going rampant. Then all of a sudden, virtually overnight, the price went from $25 to $50 a tonne. And, that really kicked us off in Indonesia. We developed this greenfield asset in the middle of a jungle and sold it when I was doing 25 million tonne of coal. That was a fascinating experience watching it grow from nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, you've seen the same with New Hope over time. Yeah. It's just growing and growing.
Yeah.
You're obviously doing a good job on the board with Jim. When was the transition for you on the board into the chair role?
Well, he was in his sort of late 70s.
Yes.
When he decided to hang up, and fortunately had enough faith in me to continue.
Yeah. You obviously had a good relationship with him, Rob.
Yeah, you knew where he stood. He never had any children of his own. He was a man. He was a man of few words. You know, I used to go and stay there when I used to come down for board meetings, and if you got a couple of sentences out of me, you're lucky.
But obviously enough to, he had confidence in you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As I said, how those people have survived those years. A bloody prisoner of war camp for 5 years. You know,
tough.
Staggering.
My take on it is you had a market cap for Soul Patts at about 700 million when you took over, and now it's got a market cap quarter of a century later at over 12 billion.
Yeah.
It's been a phenomenal journey. It's actually just unbelievable when you think about it. Is you, your family, the team, over a long period of time have achieved for shareholders a 13% per annum total shareholder return over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And dividends increasing every year over the last 25 years. And the company itself has paid a dividend every year since 1903.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a track record like it?
No, there's not. And when I think back at just listening to you then, I've been very fortunate. We've had a very good run since the late 90s. You know, you've only got to see the way the world's developed in the last 20, 25 years. And luckily we've been able to, again, with good people, not only the people at Soul Pattinson, but our investee companies.
Yes.
We've backed some very good people in those companies. And we've always focused on cash-generating businesses, because without cash, we wouldn't have been able to pay the dividends that we've paid. See, New Hope's paid about 1.3 billion just in special dividends alone.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We talked about the pharmacies going, and then in the 60s and 70s we diversified into building materials and resources. So that marks the inclusion of Brickworks and New Hope. But, that growth, I mentioned the acquisition of Bristol from Elders and the growth of New Hope. Could you just give us a bit of an insight into where the drive behind the diversification? That started obviously when those acquisitions took over, but you just quickly put your foot on the pedal.
Yes, we have, and I think again that's a credit to all those involved. We've been able to pick good people that run good businesses that generate cash.
Yes.
As you can imagine, the number of people that come knocking on our door wanting to do something with us. We've always had to be very careful who we've got into bed with.
Yeah.
And, we haven't always, don't get me wrong, we haven't always made the right decision. We've had a couple of boo-boos. But generally speaking, we've been able to find very good people that run these cash-generating businesses. And our shareholding in TPG, it came about with a $38 million investment in a TV station in Newcastle, which at the time there was a chap called Alan Bond and Christopher Skason, bloke from here, Kevin Parry, actually owned.
Oh, yeah, Parry's.
He actually owned NBN, and they devastated free-to-air TV. So we picked this asset up for $38 million. They used to have a helicopter that used to go up from Sydney every day for lunch. And the helicopter used to cost $800 an hour to run it. So I wasn't there long before I sold the chopper. But, these are the things that, and that $38 million investment, we got into digital TV, started up a telco called Soul Pattinson Telecommunication. We actually sold the TV station for $250 million back to Packer. And we now own 12.5% of a $5 billion market cap investment in TPG.
Is that one of your best investments?
That and New Hope. Be hard to beat. But they're hard to find now, those private equity deals.
Yeah.
And, we've been probably one of the early instigators in private equity.
Yes.
And that now is probably one of the biggest parts of our business.
Yes.
So we've sort of turned the wheel a full circle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just on New Hope, I can't help but not cover off on, the context of traditional energy, base power and renewables.
Yeah.
Give us I know that you've got a view on it, and, can we just get a bit of an insight into that in terms of how you perceive New Hope as an investment and an important cash generation within the Soul Patts business?
Yeah. Oh, it's still a business that the world needs.
Yes.
They're still building coal-fired power stations around the world as we speak. They're building 68 nuclear coal plants around the world. We need energy. We've done so remarkably well in this world because we've had cheap energy.
Yes.
And no one wants to know gas either. You know, renewables have a place, but they're never going to generate the base power that you need from fossil fuels.
Yes. And that is, I mean, New Hope it's got a mine life that's going to continue to grow.
Yeah. Well, as I said, they're still building coal-fired power stations. Australia produces the cleanest coal in the world.
Yes.
So, you know, I think coal mining in Australia is going to be here for quite a while. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. When you look at New Hope, then you look at TPG, and then we look at Brickworks. What about Brickworks? I mean, we're talking about coal, now we've gone to tech. Now let's go to bricks. How are you seeing the brick market in Australia? Any new technology coming through in that regard?
No. Well, there's obviously the style have changed.
Yes.
You know, once upon a time they were all red or grey bricks. Now you get different colours.
Yes.
But again, you need 11 to 1200 degrees temperatures to cook bricks, and you can't get that from battery or solar or wind.
Yeah.
But it's the market's very slow at the moment.
Yeah.
Building costs are killing people. Trying to get tradespeople, land's become very expensive. We're in a bit of a hole there at the moment.
I was going to ask you about that, Rob.
Yeah.
You know, cost of labour, you know, cost of manufacturing, cost of everything really.
Yeah.
You know, regulation. You know, how do you see Australia, and where are we positioned at the moment in that regard?
Well, we're uncompetitive.
Yep.
We are paying 2/3 more for our gas than we are in America. We have some brick investments in America.
Right.
Last month in March, we paid $800 and something for 6 plants in America. We paid $2,400 for 6 plants in New South Wales in gas. So 2/3. So our energy costs are prohibitive.
Yes.
As you mentioned, our labour costs are prohibitive, and then you can't get you're struggling to get good people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it all adds up, doesn't it?
Well,
and you're seeing that in Brickworks at the moment. Yeah.
Well, the builders are struggling to get bricklayers and plumbers and
there's a shortage of housing.
Yeah.
We really need to be able to fire that up.
Well, once upon a time, 30 years ago, if I was a builder, I could go and put my plans in on a Monday morning and pick them up on Thursday, Friday. Some of the shires and councils now, 300 days to get an approval for a house.
So nearly a year.
And nothing's changed. The houses are 25% bigger because a lot of them are 2-story now, but you've still got basically the same plumbing and electrical and bricks, etc., etc.
Do you see any way out of this?
Well, Mr. Musk is trying to change a few things. But, you know, we need to. We need to get some of this bureaucracy.
Yeah.
People need to get on with running their own business without someone in Canberra or Perth or Sydney telling us how to do it.
Yeah.
We're so over-governed, and this is what's happening. We're finding, particularly in our private equity now, people don't want to go into the corporate world, the listed world, because there's too much compliance on them.
Yes.
Whereas if they stay private, they can do what they want to do.
Yep.
You know?
Which is great for you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to then talk about the next transition with regards to Soul Patts, where you did ultimately sold off the pharmaceutical part of the business, where you had 20% ownership and you sold it off to Wesfarmers.
Yeah.
From an emotional perspective, did that sort of, you know, trigger the heartstrings a little bit?
Not really.
No.
You know, you got to be factual in business.
Yep.
Yeah. Everything's for sale except your wife. No, really.
Yeah, no, it's good. Well, that's why I was asking to see if you had any sort of attachment to that.
Yeah.
No. And they approached you about that sale, or you?
Wesfarmers were keen to do something.
Yeah.
And obviously, with their experience in office works and those sorts of things, they could probably run it better than we could as a 20% shareholder.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then there was Milton in 2021,
and
I think that was also quite pivotal when you think about where, say, Jim made these acquisitions and then you diversified and continue to grow on that, and then Milton coming in and being able to take that portfolio and being able to then eventually sell off the contents and then put it into what's been quite a diversified portfolio even more.
Yeah.
Was that always on the radar?
Probably yes and no.
Yeah.
Again, we've got some very, very smart people at Soul Pattinson in the office.
We saw an opportunity.
Yeah. And that was a market cap of about $4 billion, as you said, of equities.
Yeah.
We still have about $2.5 billion equity portfolio within Souls at the moment.
Yes.
But that cash has given us the impetus to go and do other things that have diversified away from those three major assets that we've been talking about earlier.
Yep. Well, that's a good segue into you're now running a net asset value of something like 12 billion across strategic investments like the telco, the New Hope, financial services, healthcare, and Brickworks. You've got your large cap listed companies, private equity. 28% of the portfolio is now in private markets. Let's just concentrate a little bit on private equity at the moment. AMP Control, Aquatic Achievers. I mean, that is a really interesting business in itself. 28 swim schools.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, some of our big investments started off as private equity.
Yes.
And we are not like a KKR or some of these big private equity people where they come in a lot of the time and slash and burn and cut costs and eventually hopefully flog the business off. We're happy to hold these businesses for a long period of time.
Yes.
Make them grow, get them to grow. As you mentioned, the swim schools, I think there was 8 or 10, I think, in their first. We've now got over 30. So we're happy to keep growing that business. It's, when you think about it, most children in Australia need to swim.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's essential, really.
Yeah.
And that's just got a national footprint, and it's just going to grow over time.
Yeah, we're looking to expand that business. Yeah. We've got a very good chap running it. So, again, people.
Yes. Yeah. Agriculture. You've expanded your footprint in there as well.
Yeah.
Is this sort of more for development over time or real agriculture pursuits?
Yeah. We bought a lot of water. We're mostly in citrus and table grapes.
Yes.
But again, as I mentioned, owning a property myself, I know the fluctuations you can have in agriculture, but, there'll be a time in a stage where we'll probably flog that off. And
AMP Control is to do with underground mining?
Yeah, that's how it started.
Yes.
Doing a lot of longwall equipment, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's doing a lot of in the renewables, generators and things like that in the renewable space as well. Again, run by good people out of Newcastle.
So you can see, for the listener, you can see how diversified this portfolio has become over time. I mean, we then go into private credit, which has become a very, since the banks have become a little bit standoffish in terms of lending in some circumstances, there's been an opportunity set arise. Private credit's become a bigger part of your portfolio. Are you seeing a lot of opportunity in that space?
Yeah, and we're getting to the scale now where once upon a time if someone came to you, you know that they flogged it around town before they came to us. Now we're in a position where they come to us early, so we're getting a look at the good deals.
Yes.
And there's some very, very highly profitable listed entities that we're working with. They're not sort of secondary type businesses that we're taking on. They're good, strong businesses that we're happy to invest with.
And in a way partnering with you.
Yeah.
They're leveraging into your expertise as well.
Yeah.
So when you look at, and then you've got emerging companies and property.
Yeah.
But Rob, when you look at that portfolio, the focus is on cash generation, correct?
Has to be.
Yeah.
We can't keep paying dividends like we have been. We're the only company now in the last 25 years that's increased our dividend each half.
Yes.
So you've got to have cash generating businesses.
Yeah. And growth.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, how do you keep looking for these companies over time? And I know you've got Pick Capital Partners now as like an internal investment bank. When you look at the acquisitions, I know the main priority is to generate those dividends over time. What are the key points? So when you look at a business now, and I've heard you mention good people a number of times, there's obviously a big part of it.
That's the number one.
Number one, yeah.
It has to be cash generative. And we quite often sit around the board table and think, well, if you're going to invest $200, $300, $400, $500 million, is that business going to be around in 10 years? Yeah. We've seen dramatic change in businesses. Now AI is coming to the scene.
Yes.
We've been through the technology. What's next? Is that business going to be around long enough so we can stick with it and make good money out of it?
Because generally speaking, it's a long-term hold, not a long-term hold.
Yeah, and we're happy to do that. We've learned by having a brick factory or a coal mine or something like this that over time, and you've got to remember too, a lot of these businesses we've bought at very low cost bases, So if you sell them out and you pay 30% capital gains tax, you then have to find a business that's going to generate a great return
Yep.
to supplement what that business you were previously in.
Yes, yeah.
So that's the other challenge.
Yes.
We're not afraid to sell businesses, but we've got to find something that's going to replace
That cash flow.
Yeah, yeah.
It does beg the question on how deep your DD is.
Yeah.
Obviously you're buying smart, you're buying distressed.
Not all the time.
Not all the time?
Sometimes, yeah.
Business that can make money in good and bad times.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of time on the acquisitions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the DD, due diligence. That's probably the most important thing outside of the people.
Yes.
And we're happy to throw some money at it to do our due diligence so we get it right.
Yeah.
We don't want to race into something and 5 minutes later find out.
There's something up.
Yeah. And we probably, a couple of the things that we did badly with over the previous period of time, maybe we didn't do our DD as well as we should have.
Learned from.
But, you learn from these things.
Yeah, yeah. When you look at the type of business though, Rob, there's no barrier or framework. You can go wherever you like. I mean, obviously swim schools through to technology, through to coal, nothing's off the table.
No. We're not afraid to invest.
Have you had some pretty wild ideas come your way? Or the consistent sort of approaches?
Yeah, well, we actually had our own private equity business, which was floated for a while. And there's some fascinating small, medium-sized businesses out there.
Yes.
Because they're mostly unloved. The politicians don't appreciate how many people small businesses employs.
Yes.
You've only got to drive around suburbs and see all these little places operating, and where we are here, in this industrial place here, the number of people that are employed here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fascinating.
It is. It's a huge part of Australia.
Yeah, and it's unloved.
I can't not go down the path of where we're at in the markets. I know you were waiting for this one. So look, as a long-term investor, and then it's been highlighted that you're one of Australia's most experienced and most successful investors. And it's such an opportunity to be able to just get your take on where we are in the market cycle at the moment, particularly with the US administration and what they're doing with tariffs and where we sit in Australia. What do you think in terms of the market disruption we've had over the last few days, but, how you see the next 4 years maybe panning out?
We've had a very good run. But if you talk equity markets, with some of these companies on their price earnings ratios are unheard of, particularly when you talk about the Magnificent Seven in America.
Yes.
The multiples that they're on. We've got some of these companies out here, ProMedics and WiseTech and some of these technology one. Multiples are unsustainable.
Yeah.
So there had to be sooner or later some sort of a correction. And funnily, they all seem to come out of nowhere at some particular time. And this time it's obviously Trump's tariffs.
Yes.
But, as I said, we were due for a slowdown. The thing is, time people listen to this, it may be all over and the markets might have gone up 10 or 15%, who knows. But I think in the short to medium term we're going to see some volatility. There's now talk of a possible recession in the US. So I think the biggest concern for everybody is a lot of people agree with what Trump is doing, but he's so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like he says something today, then tomorrow he changes it.
Yes.
Yeah. Like this morning he's come out and talking about another 50% on top of the 35% tariff in China. So
yes, I saw that. I saw that. But when you look at it from a Soul Pat's perspective with your investment portfolio, it's long-term, it's cash generating. Yeah. What sort of an impact do you see on that? I mean, apart from the listed equities, are obviously going to be impacted by market movement.
Yeah, we're privately hoping that there will be a bit of a slowdown. We've got a nice little war chest at the moment.
Yes.
Ready to go if there is some sort of turmoil in the markets.
And is that more favoured towards a private equity style or listed?
Equities?
Yeah.
I go back to the GFC. Commonwealth Bank was $27.
Yes.
Which we bought in the GFC. We've worked out since then they've paid more than $27 in dividends. The share price even after yesterday still around $140.
Amazing,
right?
So
people should always have cash. So when you get these periods of time, you're able to move.
Yes.
And the other thing, and I was quoted in the paper yesterday, is that not many people get rich overnight. You've got to be patient.
Yeah.
You know?
And see out these market cycles.
Yeah. And as I said, when the appropriate time comes, particularly the people that are listening to this are probably a lot of mum and dad investors, always keep some cash on the sideline so you can move when there is a. I said, if you'd have bought Commonwealth Bank 27 in the GFC for $27, Macquarie Bank got to 14.
Yeah.
You know, look where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've seen so many of these market inflections. You've seen, I mean, just as an example, you've seen the tech bubble bust. You've got the GFC. You've got COVID.
Yeah.
Is your structure such that you're ready to pounce on each one of these as they come through? And this is no different. It's a buying opportunity more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we've got a nice little nest egg at the moment if something does happen.
Do you ever take a view that you would, that things become too expensive and you liquidate to go to cash?
Yeah, we have, particularly in our equity portfolio, we have taken some money off the top.
Yes. Yeah.
Like everyone had a valuation of $90 to $100 in Commonwealth Bank, and they were trading at $150. Like,
yeah,
great business, great bank, but overvalued.
We talked about business in general in Australia and the challenges, and we talked about the high cost of doing it. What are your views on manufacturing in Australia versus probably in keeping with Trump's trying to become quite isolationist for the US? How do you think that might unfold for us?
Well, as he said, I know what he's trying to do, trying to get manufacturing back into America. And when he was there last time, Intel built a magnificent big chip factory.
Yes.
So they're not so reliant on the Chinese. But our cost base here, we can't compete. Our manufacturing, we used to have a car industry, that's gone. So many businesses, we're just not competitive, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah. And it's hard to then get that side of Australia up and running again if we can't be competitive.
Yeah. And people don't want to roll their sleeves up anymore, unfortunately. We've all become so soft.
Do you see many manufacturing businesses come your way in terms of opportunities?
Yeah. Well, AMP Control's a classic example. Yeah.
But is it something that you're sort of looking for?
Yeah. As I said, we'd look at anything if it comes up at the right price and good people and generates cash.
Yeah.
But it's getting harder, our cost base.
Just a real challenge.
Well, you can't talk to anybody in private business at the moment. They're all struggling.
Yeah.
One, to get people, energy costs, compliance. We spent half our time at bloody board meetings talking about compliance and ESG and risk and you name it, there's something there to describe it.
I was reading when I was doing the research. You made a note about how the annual report went from like 10 pages to
20 pages.
Yeah.
Well, it's factual. I got most of my mail goes out to my property, and 2 or 3 weeks ago when I was there, I noticed the Rio annual report was there. 340 pages. How can anybody read and understand that? And we're catering for people with superannuation of 12% of their income goes into superannuation, and of that money, somewhere between 20 and 30% goes to equities. How do you expect a mum and dad to understand that?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. It is a real challenge, and I think it comes back to your point with regards to companies remaining private versus listing.
Yeah.
Look, I'm conscious of time, and I just wanted to go into some general things. I wanted to quickly touch on your love of rugby. Now, just there's a fantastic field in Sydney called Millner Field. It's the home of the Eastwood team.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather, he played the game.
Yeah.
In the early 1900s, and his 3 boys, my father was one of them, they all played with Eastwood, and he was fortunate enough to be in a position, he purchased the land for them.
Good on him.
And well, I obviously played rugby at school, so it's been in my blood.
Yeah.
My son played, my 3 grandsons all played the game, so.
Are they all pretty handy?
They enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, good on them. Yeah. Look, the one you can't go past this particular period of time in your life, Rob, where in 2023 you got awarded an Officer of the Order of Australia, King's Birthday Honours for a distinguished service to business, to rugby union, as an administrator, and to the community through philanthropic contributions. It must have been a pretty proud moment.
Well, something I knew nothing about it.
No.
And then I was I was in the car. We'd been out to Sol Pattinson. My great-grandfather donated the first plane to the Royal Flying Doctor Service, Louis Pattinson.
Yeah.
So we've gone out there to talk to them, and I had the publicity girl, Courtney, in the car with me, and the bloody phone goes off. It's the bloke ringing me up asking would I accept a King's Honour. So I said to Courtney, because you're not allowed to say anything to anybody. I wasn't even allowed to tell my wife. So I said to Courtney, you've got to be pretty quiet on this. But it came out of the blue. You never, ever expect to receive something like that. And it's not my work. It's all the people that have been around me over a long period of time has made all this possible.
Oh, it's very humble.
Yeah.
But, I mean, great recognition.
Oh, yeah, it's something very proud, but you never think it's going to happen to you.
Well, you talk about family. I can tell, obviously, family's very important and special to you. Your wife, Janine, nearly 50 years.
52 this year.
52 years.
Yeah.
52 years.
This year, yeah.
This year. 3 children.
Yeah.
8 grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no time to sort of sit around.
No. We've been very fortunate. They're all healthy, which I think is the main thing. And I've been very fortunate to have a wife because we sort of live a bit separate lives. She's spent sort of probably 40% of her time up on the farm. Yeah. So I spent a bit of time in Sydney on my own. So she's been very patient to put up with me. I'm not an easy person to live with. I'm a bit like a fart in a bottle. I'm on the go all the time. So.
Classic. I must say though, when you look back at your career and your life, and this family's all part of that. What would you say to the aspiring, graduates, the young people of today that are coming out and they want to be Rob Millner. They want to have a corporate career. They want to be a part of things. What would you say to them to sort of get on track?
I think the most important thing is to do something that you want to do.
Yeah.
I would hate to be in a job where I didn't like what I was doing and having to get up every morning and go to work. So I think that's the first thing. You have to find something that you enjoy and you want to get out of bed every morning for. And be patient. As you grow in life, you can't become the managing director 2 days out of university or wherever you've been. You've got to be patient and grow with the business or grow with your own lifestyle. And hopefully in life you make the right decision and marry or have the right sort of partner that you can be comfortable with over. Because it's a lot. There's a lot of hours in a day if you're lonely and not happy and not doing the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, to wrap it up, what a chat. There's so much to learn from we could sit here and talk for hours. I could anyway. And it's been a real privilege to have you in the studio, as I said earlier, and to have this conversation. On behalf of Euros Hartleys, Rob, I must say congratulations on all you've achieved with your corporate career and with Sol Pats. It's very special to be able to achieve this with your family.
Yeah.
Ultimately being a major part of what is a significant part of Australian corporate history. And, as we've talked about, just doesn't come along often, if not ever. It's a wonderful story. And so on behalf of Euros Hartleys and all our listeners, thanks a lot for being on Finding the Front, Rob. We really do appreciate it. You're a legend. And all the very best for what's ahead.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Good on you, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Euros Hartleys Finding the Front. This podcast is for general information purposes only. Please check out euroshartleys.com for more information. Euros Hartleys holds Australian Financial Services Licence 230052.